Production funding for Flying Squirrels Insider is made possible in part by Virginia College Savings Plan. Save for tomorrow's higher education expenses with Virginia 529's 4 flexible tax-advantaged college savings plans. Details at virginia529.com. And by the Greater Richmond Chamber Save Low Fares campaign. Richmond is in danger of becoming one of America's most expensive airports again. Flying AirTran, Southwest, and JetBlue supports airline competition. Details at savelowfares.com. And by Haley Buick GMC, located at 9811 Midlothian Turnpike, offering new and pre-owned vehicles, financing options, service, parts, and accessories. HaleyBuickGMC.com, taking it to the streets.
Laying out with a headlong dive. Did he make that catch? It's Lawless. And Lawless with a miraculous catch and kicks and fires. Swing and a miss. He struck him on with a changeup. And the Squirrels are the champs in the West.
And we've got the whole gang back together again, including that magnificent white GMC terrain. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Flying Squirrels Insider. Anthony Oppermann, to be joined shortly by my broadcast partner, Jon Laaser. Almost to the end of July as we're coming down the stretch. And don't look now, but here come the Flying Squirrels surging up the Western Division standings. Richmond in a hunt for the wild card in the Western Division. Laaser and I will talk a little bit about why the Flying Squirrels have had such a terrific turnaround here in July. Also, speaking of July, that means trade deadline. And we've got the Flying Squirrels Director of Minor League Instruction, Shane Turner, joining us to talk a little bit about what goes into the thought process on the minor league side with the Giants when they talk about making trades with other teams this time of year. And, of course, we've got that favorite game from the Diamond, Whack-An-Intern. An interesting introspective on Whack-An-Intern. It's not all fun and games. We've got that and more coming up here on Flying Squirrels Insider. As mentioned previously, we're here at the end of July, trade deadline looming. So coming up in our next segment, have a sit-down conversation with coordinator of minor league instruction for the San Francisco Giants, Shane Turner, as he talks a little bit about the Giants' thought process and takes us behind the scenes a little bit about what the Giants think about when they're talking about potential trades with other major league teams and specifically how that affects the farm system. It's an interesting conversation. And speaking of interesting, coming up a little later on, we go behind the scenes with Whack-An-Intern. Not all fun and games, so we will find out. But before we get to all of that, Flying Squirrels find themselves right in the thick of the wild card hunt. Welcome in now my broadcast partner, Jon Laaser. And Laaser, it's been a remarkable turnaround for the Flying Squirrels. You look at the way they ended the month of June, dropping 8 out of 9, but all of a sudden a surge in July. What are some of the biggest reasons as to why this team is on the cusp of setting a franchise record for wins in the month?
I think the biggest reason is the offense has finally showed up, and that can be attributed to filling in some of those holes that this club had at the beginning of the season. You had a lot of unprotected youth in your lineup, and right now they're missing Russ Mitchell. We've seen a cooling period over the last 3 or 4 days after that big surge at the beginning of the month, and even though the numbers weren't quite there for Russ Mitchell, I just think he's that catalyst for this offense, and you can't talk about an offensive surge for this club without Gary Brown, because he's had a 6-week period for the record books, hitting well over 400, certainly going to be in consideration for player of the month in the month of July. And for him, maybe more importantly, he's resurrected that value that he has as the top prospect in the Giants organization. So for the Flying Squirrels, it's starting to feel an awful lot like 2011, deja vu all over again, as Yogi Berra was fond of saying, where you looked like it was a ball club left for dead, so to speak, at the end of June. But as we know in the Eastern League, with some of this youth and inconsistency, you just just never quite know where it's coming from. It's come out of nowhere. It's going to make it a fun final sprint to the finish in this 2012 season.
You bring up Gary Brown. What has been the biggest reason behind his turnaround? Because it's been so dramatic. I mean, for the good chunk of the season to this point, at least the first half of the season, Gary was struggling, hitting right around the 215 mark at some points, but all of a sudden turning it around. What has been the reason for that?
I think Gary Brown fell into a trap of sorts that a lot of prospects do when they come to the Eastern League for the first time, whereas at the beginning of the season, he struggled quite a bit and then fell into the trap of saying, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. I don't know if he thought that, but that's the way it looked. You start to press and say, I've got to get my numbers up. People are viewing me as the top prospect in this organization, and I need to lead this team offensively. And it's like quicksand. The more you struggle to try to get out of it, the farther in you sink. And I think at some point you have to become immersed in that quicksand. And Gary Brown was about 2 months ago, to the point where he went to hitting coach Ken Joyce and said, I need help. And I think for the first time in his career, that was something that he said. And the Giants instructors, including Ken, were there to pick him up. They went into the cage. They did extensive work. They took away some of the things that he was doing that were taking away his lower half and his swing. And it's remarkable when you have the ability of a Gary Brown, and sometimes you get just a little bit off track, how skewed the results can get. Gary went in, did that work to his credit, started to buy into what the Giants wanted him to implement in his swing, then started to get some confidence. And you see a player like that, he has so many tools and so much excitability that once he has confidence, he becomes more aggressive on the base pass, he becomes more aggressive defensively, and then it just starts to exude at the plate. And that's what we saw. It was fun to watch.
What's interesting is the fact that we talk about the Flying Squirrels surge in July and their performance at the beginning of the month, and they did that largely without one of the best hitters in the lineup, Daniel Maiora. He was struggling at the start of July. He went through a 10-game period where he was hitting just 108, 4 out of 37. But boy, that All-Star break really rejuvenated Daniel. He's hitting almost 515 games since the break.
I think it can be attributed directly to fatigue. He was carrying the load offensively for this club. When you're the three-hole hitter on a team that's not scoring runs, there's pressure that comes with that. And at the same time, he became the focal point of the opposition's game plan. I think they said, we're not going to let this guy beat us. We're not going to give him anything that he can drive. We're not going to give him anything where he can collect extra base hits. And then when that starts to happen and the other guys around you aren't producing, you again try to do too much. I know I sound like a broken record sometimes saying that, but it becomes a frustrating feeling. Then you pile on fatigue of playing every day. Daniel's not a spring chicken like a Tommy Joseph or a Gary Brown. He needed that All-Star break. He got that All-Star break, and he started to get some help in the lineup from the aforementioned Brown, but also Ehre Adrianza starting to swing it and protecting some of these other guys. Now Maiora starting to get some pitches to hit, dropped down in the order, got some confidence back, came back up into the order, and has continued to flourish. And I look for a strong finish to the season for him now that he's padded in that order with some other capable bats.
And the other thing for Daniel is he's caught the attention of the San Francisco Giants as well with his performance to this point.
We've seen this before in this organization, and it's why free agents like to play for San Francisco, because they don't have a great track record of developing their own offensive talent. They do on the pitching side. They have a tremendous pitching staff at the major league level and through the minor leagues. And we saw it with Justin Christian last year. He was somewhat of an afterthought as a signing, even though he's a very capable bat. You didn't think to yourself, this is a guy that's going to end the season in San Francisco. And he did, playing with the Giants last September and actually back up in the major leagues right now. So for Daniel Maiora, this is exactly what you're looking for. And you are referencing the fact that the Giants have started to move him around positionally, having him play some second base, because that's a position of need in the big leagues. And they feel as though his bat plays at the major league level. I tend to agree. If he can find that right position, what a great story that would be.
Talk about the San Francisco Giants looking to make some additions and maybe help the big club. And this is the time of year where teams are out trying to do that in full force. Trade deadline, we've already seen it impact some other Eastern League teams. Robbie Grossman, the center fielder from Altoona, being traded to the Houston Astros in the Wandy Rodriguez deal. Giants, like everybody, looking for a little bit of bullpen depth. Obviously, the back end of that bullpen. And everybody's always looking for a key bat or a key player to help bolster their lineup. What are some of the rumors you've been hearing about the Giants?
Biggest rumor I've heard lately regarding the Giants is Cleveland closer Chris Perez. I think the Giants would like him very much at the back end of their bullpen. You referenced Casilla and some of the struggles he's had trying to fill in for Brian Wilson, and that's no small task, because not only are you closing for a winning ball club, you're closing for a winning ball club that doesn't score a lot of runs. So you're not coming in with a lot of 3-run leads looking for saves. You're coming in with a lot of 1-2-run leads, and that's a pressure cooker in front of a sold-out AT&T Park on a night-in, night-out basis. So without question, the Giants are looking for a high-end back-end reliever. Whether or not they're willing to give back the value that clubs are going to want for a Chris Perez, that's the question. And I quite frankly don't think, in conversations that I've had with some of the Giants executives, that they're willing to do that for the second consecutive year. They gave up Zach Wheeler last year, their top pitching prospect. Of course, you've got the two top offensive prospects in Gary Brown and Tommy Joseph with this ball club. I don't think the Giants want to part with either of them. I know they don't want to, and I think a better phrasing is I don't think they're going to be willing to. So we may see another lower tier type deal where you see a package of mid-level prospects that would go to another organization. Still very much looking for a first baseman, I think, as well as Brandon Belt, Brett Pill, and some of the others that have platooned at first base have struggled, and a couple of other X factors just in the last couple of days. Pablo Sandoval with a knee injury on the other corner. He had actually come over and hurt his knee playing first base for San Francisco. That potentially opens up another hole, and here come the Los Angeles Dodgers making a big splash by sending a couple of prospects over to Miami for Hanley Ramirez, and what they're saying is they're now targeting Justin Morneau and probably aren't done. So the Dodgers have thrown down the gauntlet and said, we're coming for you. We're not going to let you walk away with the division. And I think Brian Sabean and company, at least to appease their fan base, will need to make a move or two to say, you know what, we're not taking that lying down.
You said you don't think that the Flying Squirrels are going to trade, or the Giants are going to trade the Flying Squirrels' top two prospects in Gary Brown and Tommy Joseph. Are there any other guys on this club that other teams might have interest in?
Yes, there are. And without citing those organizations, having some conversations with scouts, I know they've heavily been looking at Ehre Adrianza. I think because of his offensive struggles and also the fact that Brown and Joseph take those headlines so frequently, we forget what a dynamic player he can be, particularly with the average hovering where it is. But he's Major League ready right now defensively. Could fill a utility role and a defensive need for a team that's in contention and has a somewhat full roster. And the other one that I continue to hear is left-hander Mike Kickham. He has such explosive stuff and such a high ceiling. We call these guys mid-level prospects because they have a big area of development that they still need to address and isn't a certainty that they will address fully and become an everyday Major League player, which is what you're looking for. For Kickham, it's his command of the fastball right now. It takes away from his pitch count, his outings, his efficiency on the hill. But make no mistake, the stuff is there to profile at the Major League level. For Adrianza, obviously it's his bat, trying to find a consistent approach from both sides of the plate that will get his average up. And I'm not talking 300, you're talking more 240, 250 like you're starting to see from Brandon Crawford. But those are two guys. Another guy, Jake Dunning, who has lit up the radar gun to 96, 97, but done so inconsistently, is another guy that may be thrown into a package deal. Again, this is purely speculation, but at the same time, those are the names that I continue to hear.
You look at the Flying Squirrels, each of the last 2 years, they've had somebody traded off their team. In 2010, it was Daniel Turpin. Last year, we saw Henry Sosa and Jason Stoffel traded away from the club. When you look at this from a player standpoint, and I think Tommy Joseph, you had a conversation with him about it, had the right frame of mind, you're looking at this, and you have to look at it as, yes, it may be a little bit unsettling to leave an organization that may be the only one you've ever known since you've been drafted, but at the same time, it means somebody else wants you and somebody else values you. And in the case of a Henry Sosa, that could open up the door to some other opportunities.
And the Ryan Verdugo is another perfect example. And I remember a conversation I had with him before he was traded to Kansas City following the year last year. He said, yeah, I want to get traded, not because I don't like the Giants, and I hope the Giants wouldn't take it that way. They're such a good organization and so stacked with pitching that a lot of these minor league guys recognize, hey, I'm not overtaking a Matt Cain. I'm not overtaking a Madison Bumgarner. And until this year, I'm certainly not taking the spot of a Tim Lincecum in the rotation. Where are there other opportunities? Lesser Major League ball clubs. So they look at it the right way as an opportunity. And Ryan Verdugo recently got to the big leagues. Would he have gotten to the big leagues this year with the San Francisco Giants? In my mind, absolutely not. Same thing for Henry Sosa. Would he have pitched in San Francisco last year? No. Did he get the opportunity to pitch in Houston? Yes. So I think when you take away immediacy of the reaction, I don't want to leave my friends, I don't want to leave the system that I'm familiar with. They recognize that in a lot of cases, it is an opportunity.
And certainly for Zach Wheeler, who's dealt from the farm system last year to the New York Mets, now he's got center stage in that New York rotation potentially for years to come if he can fulfill his potential. So certainly case in point with a guy like that right there as well. Well, ladies, we've got more trade talk coming up with Shane Turner, the coordinator of minor league instruction with the Giants. We definitely appreciate the insights. And so it's going to be an interesting next couple of weeks and to see what happens and down the stretch. And oh, by the way, just because the trade deadline passes doesn't mean that there still can't be deals happening later on in August. It just means the guys have to go through waivers. So we'll definitely have to keep an eye out for that.
We definitely will. Good to be sitting back here with you. It's been too long.
More trade talk in a bit, but when we come back, an introspective as we go behind the scenes of Whack-An-Intern here on Flying Squirrels Insider.
Production funding for Flying Squirrels Insider is made possible in part by Virginia College Savings Plan. Save for tomorrow's higher education expenses with Virginia 529's 4 flexible tax-advantaged college savings plans. Details at virginia529.com. And by the Greater Richmond Chamber Save Low Fares campaign. Richmond is in danger of becoming one of America's most expensive airports again. Flying AirTran, Southwest, and JetBlue supports airline competition. Details at savelowfares.com. And by Haley Buick GMC, located at 9811 Midlothian Turnpike, offering new and pre-owned vehicles, financing options, service, parts, and accessories. HaleyBuickGMC.com, taking it to the streets.
Welcome back to Flying Squirrels Investigates. I'm Mike Murphy. Tonight, we pull back the curtains on the Flying Squirrels' hottest new promotion, Whack-An-Intern. Our discoveries are both eye-opening and disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. We've created quite a stir with this new promotion, Whack-An-Intern. What is the concept of the promotion?
Well, we've taken the classic arcade game, Mike, Whack-A-Mole, and we really wanted to bring that to life at the ballpark by using real people. Well, I guess you could call them real people, interns.
Under the play-by-play voice of the Flying Squirrels on Sports Radio 910, John Laaser with the Little Caesars Whack-An-Intern.
We know it seems a little bit harsh at times, but really, it's very lighthearted. It's a lot like the WWE, professional wrestling, where all the violence is staged. Certainly nobody's getting hurt.
How do the interns feel about being selected for this lighthearted promotion?
They actually really get into it. They're really excited about it. For a lot of them, it's their only chance to shine in life.
I live in constant fear of the mallet. I can't sleep at night. I keep having flashes of that box.
The interns and I know it doesn't appear this way to the crowd, but we're actually a lot like family. We all have the same goal of putting on a fantastic show, and I think that really bonds us together.
I can't stand Laaser. I daydream of whacking him with that mallet when he says something mean to me. It's really the only thing that makes me smile.
The Flying Squirrels obviously have a lot of different departments, and therefore several different interns. How do you decide who gets selected each night?
Well, it's actually to the point, Mike, where they clamor for the opportunity. So we've gotten to the point where we actually use it as somewhat of a reward system. They do a good job that day or that week, and they get to participate in the big show in front of the big crowd.
And post-game, we're going to have launch ball guys, and don't forget, this is not a fireworks night, so launch ball will be immediately following the game. And now it's time to choose who is going to be our Whack-An-Intern for tonight. Let's see here. Who ticked me off this week? Kelly, any thoughts?
That one.
You would never force an intern to participate against their will?
Oh, absolutely not. They're all eager to be a part of it. Like I said, they want to be out here. They love being out here.
I'll let you decide, America. Whack-An-Intern. Friendly game or an intern's worst nightmare. Flying Squirrels are currently accepting applications for interns for the 2013 season. This has been FSI Investigates. Join us next week when we dive into the competitive world of rally pig racing.
Welcome back to Flying Squirrels Insider. I swear to you, none of those interns were actually harmed. We're back on set here now as we're joined by Giants minor league coordinator of instruction, Shane Turner. We're lucky enough to catch him while he's in town with some of the other Giants executives checking out the Flying Squirrels. And Shane, thanks so much for taking time for Flying Squirrels Insider. We certainly appreciate it.
Well, this is one of my favorite places to come. You guys do a great job here, and the atmosphere is unbelievable.
Well, thank you for that, and it's mid-July, and that means it is busy season in the development system for you guys, particularly when an organization is a buyer. Giants right now sitting in first place. That puts them in that spot. How does that change the way you guys conduct your business at the middle of the season as opposed to maybe being a selling team?
Well, the funny thing is because the possibility of a trade happening at any moment, we are constantly updating our evaluation of players. Not only are they going to be big leaguers, but how quickly? And I think that's the biggest thing. Is he going to, is he going to be a big leaguer by September? Is he opening day maybe be in our lineup or our rotation? So we're constantly reevaluating what we're seeing, and sometimes it may be a case of over-evaluating because where you are that day and who the possibility you have to make a trade for and what we're looking for certainly affects whether a guy is untouchable or tradable. And I always make the statement, obviously in the right deal, unless somebody were ready to go to the big leagues right now and be a contributor, that they're not untouchable. So I think the big thing for us is going through the system and scouring the system and being very sure internally, who we think our best players are. What you read in publications sometimes isn't by us. we have a little different order sometimes of how we rank guys. Sometimes we rank guys. There may be a player we may think is better long term, but somebody's closer to the big leagues, or it's a position we need.
You mentioned those rankings and referring to Baseball America, and I'm going to talk about a couple of the guys that Baseball America has up there with you in just a second. But before we do that, you're in here evaluating. Dick Tidrow is in here along with a number of the other hitting instructors, pitching instructors. How does that affect the guys? Because they're not stupid and clueless to how the system works. They know that you guys are in here doing that. How do you work in and around them while making those evaluations?
Well, I think the biggest thing, each of us and myself personally try to develop a relationship with the players so that when I come in, it's not a case of where they're trying too hard or maybe get nervous. And I'm not seeing the way they have been playing as of late. The one thing they have to understand is everything that happens here on a daily basis, whether I'm here or not, I know about. I talk to the staff. We get reports. If I have questions, I make calls. It's got to affect them, I'm sure. For most of these guys, it probably affects them more in the sense that I want to be in the big leagues in an hour. So they try too hard, and we got to kind of factor that in and understand that that's a part of it, but also understand that when they get to the big leagues, there's going to be a lot more eyes on them than ours, including fans, ESPN, the GM on a nightly basis.
Let's go back. You referenced some of those guys that ranked, and I imagine Gary Brown and Tommy Joseph, regardless of publication or internally, are at or near the top. And you were here in April looking at Gary Brown when he struggled. Now that he's feasting, how is he different?
Well, I think two things. I felt early that he would struggle a little bit. First of all, knowing Gary Brown. I mean, Gary wants to be in the big leagues last year. And, that's a great quality because it means he comes to the park with a certain attitude that, he's going to get closer to that goal. The biggest thing for me, the adjustment he's made, he had a little move with a pre-step that opened his hips, which he lost his lower half, so he was having a hard time covering the outer half. It wasn't as big a deal in A ball because they don't locate as well. Well, here where they start locating better, he started having problems. But, to his credit, he's made the adjustment, and we're seeing the benefits of that right now.
Tommy Joseph also struggling maybe for a different reason at the beginning of the year, inconsistent playing time, just turned 21 years old a week ago. How close is he?
Well, it's a hard question to ask, but I would phrase it this way, not as far as probably anybody thinks. Being a young kid, things come to him pretty rapidly. The inconsistent playing time, he really only started catching his senior year in high school. Now having to learn to catch every single day, going through the bumps and ailments that go with being a catcher but not really being hurt, as we saw last night. Broken bat, hits him in the shoulder. I mean, things you have to deal with. He basically went from high school, he's 21 years old. He's in Double-A, a heartbeat away from being a major league player and having to learn to play every single day at a position where if you are struggling offensively, you can't let it affect your defense at all. That's a lot for a young kid to handle, and he is handling it, and I think he's a lot closer in the big leagues than people think.
Well, Shane, I know you got to get out there this afternoon and do some more evaluating. We'll let you go, but thanks so much for taking time for us, and dynamite shirt as always.
I saved my wardrobe for coming here to Richmond. I appreciate it as always. I love coming here.
We always love having Shane in town. Again, Shane Turner, coordinator of minor league instruction for the San Francisco Giants. It is a busy season. It's been a busy show, and we are out of time. My thanks to broadcast partner Anthony Oppermann, our show producer Craig Keaton, and our entire crew. We'll see you from Flying Squirrels Insider.
Production funding for Flying Squirrels Insider is made possible in part by Virginia College Savings Plan. Save for tomorrow's higher education expenses with Virginia 529's 4 flexible tax-advantaged college savings plans. Details at virginia529.com. And by the Greater Richmond Chamber Save Low Fares campaign. Richmond is in danger of becoming one of America's most expensive airports again. Flying AirTran, Southwest, and JetBlue supports airline competition. Details at savelowfares.com. And by Haley Buick GMC, located at 9811 Midlothian Turnpike, offering new and pre-owned vehicles, financing options, service, parts, and accessories. HaleyBuickGMC.com, taking it to the streets.